Hey everybody, one more video for my pyramid series. And I think I've covered most of the structures that are on lists and that are not on lists in Egypt. And there are a few more pyramids that are reported on, but information is scarce, so the pyramid series could be wrapping up here. But this is a place I have not talked about, but I have mentioned, I think in my video on the Red Pyramid or the Bent Pyramid down at Dashur here. But this just looked weird to me for one reason, this mound here. And it seemed to be open in the middle. But we have obviously modern buildings built right, literally right around this, and it almost appears right butting up against it here. What is that all about? This descending shaft. But what I noticed is this ancient wall that had deteriorated, and this is really thick, maybe 30 meters thick. And that is reminiscent of some of the thick walls that you see down at Dendera around some of the temples in Abydos. This is a huge wall. Maybe it went all the way around here. But they attribute this to Senusret III, the same guy who they say has a tomb, a huge, massive, unexplained tomb down at Abydos that is built under the mountain of Anubis, and that goes a kilometer under that mountain. I don't think I mentioned that in the Devil's Punch Bowl video. That goes a kilometer under that mountain. But here you can see how close to the Nile it was built. And that is a little rare to get this close to the Nile. But here you can see that massive wall, and obviously temples were built around this structure. And what this looked like originally, that is the big question, I guess. But this pyramid, like others, they're all unique. And this had 7 small satellite pyramids, I believe. 4 on one side and 3 on the other, and I'll show you that in a diagram. But this is what it looks like. And that's odd with these modern structures. This is probably a restricted area, I would assume. I don't think too many people visit this old structure. And to give it some context here, let me just back up. This is Dashur. We have the Black Pyramid. Turn off your phone, Chuck. I've told you once, and I'm not going to tell you again. Turn off your phone when you're making videos. Here is the Black Pyramid of Amenemhet right down here. This is the Bent Pyramid right here. This is the Red Pyramid right here. And this is the Pyramid of Senusret III, supposedly. But there was reports of at least 3 other pyramids by Lepsius and Perrin and some of these other people. And I see traces of some lost pyramids in Dashur. And this is looking south from the pyramid field at Dashur, looking down the Nile. And this is looking to the north, up towards the Great Pyramid. And just up to the north here, we have the strange, mysterious South Saqqara pyramid with all this stuff under the earth. This is Kajender's, they say, supposedly. But that is the pyramid field, and then we get up here to Saqqara, just up to the north. But this, what did this look like originally? That is a big question, and this will give you a good idea of what Egyptian pyramid structures ended up like. Now here is a look at Senusret III, a very powerful pharaoh coming from roughly, say, 4,000 years ago, the 12th dynasty. He was a tall dude. He was about 6'6". That's pretty rare for back then. Very tall. And they attribute the pyramid at Dashur to him. Also, that huge megastructure that goes a kilometer underneath the mountain of Anubis down at Abydos, credit to him, based on a couple things found just inside of that place. But here is a look at him. And here is some artwork found in a relative's tomb, I believe. But here is Senusret, posture of the constellation of Orion, as all pharaohs were depicted. Here's some canopic jars that were found in nearby temples near this pyramid here. And here is some artwork left by people who looted this place, this pyramid at Dashur. And by the depiction of these people, this was probably the Hyksos, coming from about 3,600 years ago. And they were people who ruled northern Egypt. They had kind of curly hair. They were considered shepherds. They lost in a warfare to the southern Egyptians, and roughly 300,000 went north in a mass exodus. But here is a look at the pyramid and what's below. And I guess there is 2 pyramids, or 3 pyramids on the south side, small satellite pyramids, and then 4 on the north side. Now, the burial chamber down here, which nobody was ever found in, this is a little odd just because it does not fall directly under what they say the apex of the pyramid would be, and that's really consistent in all pyramids, really all over the world. This one is not under the apex, so that is a little strange. And this burial chamber had 15 niches nearby it, and a smaller compartment or container they say was used for canopic jars and stuff like that, burial goods, and that's all up for wide speculation. But the burial chamber, let me just read briefly here. It says oddly, the burial chamber does not lie close to the vertical axis. This chamber has a false vaulted ceiling with a stress-relieving gabled roof built of 5 pairs of limestone beams, each weighing 30 tons, and we would need a small crane to lift that today. It says, above this was another mud brick vault. The walls of the chamber are sheathed in granite and covered in a thin layer of white stucco gypsum. It says, elsewhere in the substructure, the floors, ceiling, and false door are covered in a cheaper limestone and painted with red and black dots so that it would resemble the more expensive and durable pink granite. I don't know if I've ever read that about a pyramid before. It says, keeping with tradition, a marvelous granite sarcophagus was located by the west wall of the burial chamber, and uninscribed because Tour Egypt says that they didn't put anything on the sarcophagus of 12th dynasty pharaohs. It says it had niches, 15 along its side, in an imitation of the Djoser step pyramid enclosure wall at Saqqara. And I need to look at Djoser's pyramid again, because I've been reading some things. And what were found left by 1st and 2nd dynasty pharaohs and unidentified pharaohs. And the 1st and 2nd dynasty pharaohs are leaving goods under the pyramid of Djoser. Why do they say it was built in the 3rd dynasty? That makes no sense. But this is Tour Egypt. Now these 4 satellite pyramids on the north side, this is a diagram of what is underneath them. And this is a diagram by an early explorer. And the way he has these sarcophagus in each of these chambers, these appear to be the same style at least as those massive granite ones in the Serapeum. But clearly work was done here by the dynastic Egyptians. And I make a lot of videos saying, well, all this remarkable work has to be done by a prior civilization. Well, the dynastic Egyptians built incredible stuff themselves. But it seems we have 2 different periods of history, and that's the difficulty separating what is what. I just wanted to mention that. Now I wanted to show you this pic, and this clearly shows you the 2 different periods of history here. We have what's left, the original casing stones with these dovetail clamps. That is what they are called, I believe. But these are in some of the oldest and most famous sites in the world. And I know a lot of you are familiar with these dovetail clamps, but here seems the Egyptians built over an original structure 4,000 years ago, and then by the time of Ramses II, roughly 650 years later or so, this was a pile of rubble. Now, I just want to read a little bit about these clamps, and some of these were found, so they were studied. It says, clamps found at Pumapunku were made of unusual alloy, 95.15% copper, 2.05% arsenic, 1.70% nickel, and 0.84% silicon, and 0.26 Zoliza. What is Zoliza? I do not know. It is said some of these key cuts indicated traces of platinum, which melts at 1,768 degrees Celsius, so whoever was doing the work must have had some mastery of high temperature smelting of ores in crucibles. We have that type of stonework found in Bolivia, Tunisia, Armenia, Syria, Spain, Persia, Ethiopia, Cambodia at Angkor Wat, the Maldives, Japan, and some of the most ancient stonework on all the earth. Now here are traces of those dovetail clams found really all over the world. And I don't think he mentioned Easter Island, but I think there is a spot on there where there's some dovetail clams. But here you see in some of the most ancient looking and impressive stonework. I think this comes from Angkor Wat, but Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuaman, and those sites where original megalithic stonework was used, the Coricancha. But here, Greece, this gives you a look at them, and a few of these have survived, so studies were done on them. Here you see them here. But I will leave the link here, and this is in Japan, I believe. But that is a good indicator that something is very ancient. Now here is a pic looking east from the west side of it, and maybe this is just barely what remains of that ancient wall. And on the east side, obviously, Nile flooding probably took out the eastern side of that massive wall that was enclosing this, but this is all that remains. Looks like a hill. You can just barely detect a few things, maybe an ancient tomb actually cut in this, but barely anything recognizable that is man-made. Here is another pic of it, and it looks like, strangely, that the middle is like an open area, strangely. And here's an old pic. I'm not sure exactly the age of this, but here is that structure, and it looks like the middle of this is actually open. This is the pyramid, they say, of Senusret III, who they say had the massive, incredible tomb down at Abydos that I think has just been mislabeled. This is Dashur, home of the Red and Bent Pyramid, and a few others that are lost to history and still there, and one of these unfinished pyramids right nearby, and a bunch of mysterious structures still under the earth. Hope you thought that was interesting, and this short video turned into a long one, and you all have a very nice day.